Representation matters.
This is not like a gay versus Christian issue here.
All we wanted was just a space, and we created one.
Being open about who they are and not fearful about who they are.
From what I understand, a lot of students are really excited and thankful.
Regardless of my sexual orientation, I can contribute to this community in multiple ways.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Joey Horta.
And I'm Paigesellenberger.
Tonight we're recognizing Pride Month, a time to learn about the LGBTQ plus community's rich history and those who inspire by bringing harmony to the community.
Over the next half hour, we'll celebrate the triumphs and challenges our neighbors are facing and the steps to overcome them.
We'll also elevate diverse voices in celebration of Pride Month across Central Texas and the Brazos Valley. Pride Month began as a way to commemorate the Stonewall riots and to recognize the impact of the lives, history, and culture of the LGBTQ plus community. The Stonewall riots started June 28, 1969, when LGBTQ customers of the Stonewall Inn in New York City resisted police raids on their bar. The first official Pride event would be held in the city the following year.
Since then, the Pride movement has continued to fight for gay rights here in the U.S. and across the globe. Currently, being LGBTQ plus is illegal in 34 countries, and in 12, it's punishable by death.
Right here at home, the Waco Pride Network fosters the LGBTQ plus community by uniting, promoting, commemorating, and celebrating it.
Since 2019, the organization has committed itself to holding community events throughout the year while also engaging with educational institutions in the Waco area. One of its biggest events is out on the Brazos Pride Festival. It strives to be a cultural celebration of the greater Waco LGBTQ plus community.
You know, the city's undertaking some really great efforts around equity and economic development, and just making it explicit that queer voices and queer issues will be included in those conversations. But yeah, those kinds of steps could really help people feel that that this city is a welcoming and affirming place. And I think that's really critical, not just to the LGBTQ plus community, but also to Waco as a whole.
The events provide community engagement while also acknowledging issues. The organization also helps grow physical spaces for use by the LGBTQ plus community, identifying accessible, safe spaces and resources. It's not often talked about, but the LGBTQ plus community has a rich history in Central Texas. On April 11th, 1953, more than 60 people were arrested when several men gathered for a wedding in Waco. Vows were never exchanged. Tommy Jean Brown was arrested while dressed in drag, wearing a traditional white wedding dress. Unknowingly, history was made on that day. It was the first attempt at a gay wedding in the area.
In 1977, the Waco Citizen published a series of articles titled Gay Life in Waco. They highlighted LGBTQ people, their lives, and their struggle.
26 years later, in 2003, a Baylor student came out to his friend. Later that year, he lost his scholarship.
But this year, for the first time, LGBTQ plus students at Baylor are now able to celebrate Pride Month, knowing there's an official space for them on campus.
25 News reporter Andrew Lamparski caught up with the president of the all-new PRISM organization, who's thanking the work of the LGBTQ plus students that came before them.
Laura Duncan is making history as the first ever president of a chartered LGBTQ plus student group at Baylor.
I don't even know if I can put it into words. I'm absolutely elated.
The organization is already getting its feet off the ground, hosting interest meetings at the end of this school year.
From what I understand, a lot of students are really excited and thankful, at least the ones that have spoken to me. They want more information. They want to know how they can get involved.
As a chartered organization, the group will have access to university support and resources. But it wasn't an easy road to PRISM.
This is not like a gay versus Christian issue here. This is a place for Baylor to exemplify their Christian commitment and their mission towards love and justice through this manner.
The university regent's opening the door to an LGBTQ plus organization for the first time in 2021. While still maintaining the university's Statement on Human Sexuality, which reads, "It is thus expected that Baylor students will not participate in advocacy groups which promote understandings of sexuality that are contrary to biblical teaching." Duncan is mindful of the work it took to get here, thanking the efforts of previous students like unofficial LGBTQ plus group Gamma Alpha Upsilon or Baylor Gay.
Regent decision wouldn't have been something that was kind of possible without the groups before PRISM putting in that work and kind of advocating for themselves.
Duncan says while they expect some pushback, the welcome to PRISM has been warm so far and looks forward to a fresh start for LGBTQ+ students in the fall.
Being able to find a spot where they feel like they can connect with people and find resources that are, for them, I think it's overwhelming almost.
The flag you see behind us represents the LGBTQ+ community, and it's changed over time. So is the language. L stands for lesbian, a woman emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to other women. G stands for gay, used to describe men attracted to the same sex or anyone attracted to the same or similar genders. B stands for bisexual, people attracted to more than one gender. T stands for transgender, those whose gender identity and/or expression differs from cultural expectations. Being transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. Some non-binary people identify as trans, while others do not.
Q has two meanings. First, queer, and a catch-all to include those who do not identify as only straight and/or folks who might be non-binary or gender fluid. Q stands for those also questioning their identity. I stands for intersex, those born with differences in their sex traits and reproductive anatomy. And A stands for asexual, those who lack a sexual attraction or sexual interests in others. The plus symbol leaves room for the other sexual identities and orientations not covered in the acronym. Another important term to remember is cisgender. That means a person whose personal identity and gender corresponds to their sex assigned at birth. As acceptance of the LGBTQ community began to grow, so did a devastating disease. In the late 1970s, HIV began spreading in the U.S. The virus, which attacks the body's immune system, can develop into AIDS. At the height of the AIDS pandemic in the 1990s, the CDC says more than 50,000 people died every day. Right now, it's estimated that nearly 38 million people worldwide and more than 1 million in the U.S. are living with HIV.
And when it comes to HIV, after decades, people still have misconceptions about the disease and who and how it affects people. 25 News reporter Bain Froney introduces us to one couple who, despite the challenges of HIV, are not allowing it to impact their love.
24 years ago, Rob met the love of his life.
We actually met when I was hosting karaoke at a club in Austin, and he would come in and sing. And I thought he was the cutest thing on two legs.
And Rob and Jolene have been together ever since. But when they fell in love in the 90s, the world wasn't as accepting of the LGBTQ community.
We grew up in a time where we were told that we would never find somebody to be with for the rest of our lives. Marriage was never an option for us at that time.
But there was another obstacle that Rob and Jolene had to overcome.
My husband has been HIV positive for more than 30 years.
Decades ago, HIV would have been a death sentence, but now, over 40 years later,
this is the first generation that is going to die with HIV instead of dying from HIV.
But while HIV has never impacted the love that Rob and Jolene have for each other, throughout the decades, HIV and AIDS has been stigmatized as a disease that only impacts the LGBTQ community, when in reality, the fastest growing demographics right now are older straight women.
There was a lot of language around HIV being a gay man's disease. While it's true that the majority of new infections are between men that have sex with men, there are some women that are at high risk for getting HIV, including Black women in our communities.
Viruses don't pick and choose who gets it.
But the stigmas don't stop there.
There's still a stigma around if I shake hands with someone who is HIV positive, I might get it. Or if I share a fork with them or even share a hug with them.
In reality, HIV can only be transmitted through sexual intercourse or sharing needles.
The CDC says that as long as their viral load is undetectable, it is physically impossible for them to give HIV to someone else.
And for the couple, HIV has never changed how they felt about the other.
And so we are living every day with HIV in our world. But HIV is not our entire world.
The Waco-McLennan County Public Health District wants to make it easier for people to get tested for HIV and to get the support they need. For anyone who's currently living with HIV, the health district offers case management, housing assistance, utility assistance, and can also coordinate medical care. For more information, contact your local health district.
During the AIDS crisis, the FDA restricted gay men from donating blood over concerns of spreading HIV. But despite being reduced, some restrictions remain all these years later. Back in 2015, the restrictions were lowered to a year, but during the pandemic, it was lowered further to 90 days. Josh Tutt with the Pride Community Center in the Brazos Valley says the restrictions caused blood banks to miss out on essential donations.
During the Pulse nightclub shooting, in Orlando, Florida, years back, where our own community was not able to be there for our own community, and there are just some stark moments in time like that where those policies are really shown for as hurtful as they can be.
The Biden administration says it's committed to ensuring the FDA's decision is science-based and not based on a stigma. Other groups who are disqualified from donating include people who have gotten piercings or tattoos within 90 days. Coming up, a dedication to inclusion. How 2 local shops are teaming up with one organization to make sure their transgender customers feel at home. Being a member of the LGBTQ+ community can come with many challenges. One of those many transgender people face is as simple as finding a space to get a haircut.
Alicia Despreto introduces us to 2 shops in Waco dedicated to inclusion.
Visiting a salon can be a therapeutic experience for many, but for members of the LGBT community, that's not always the case.
A lot of stories that you hear are people who are forced to keep their hair shorter, or they're not allowed to express any type of color in their hair.
While hair can be a great way to express yourself, for transgender people, that expression is often prevented. That's where Strands for Trans steps in.
Anywhere you go, you want to feel comfortable and like you're welcomed. So anything I can do to make other people feel welcome, why not?
Danielle Jimenez owns one of just 2 shops in Waco registered with Strands for Trans. The nationwide group pushes for a future of acceptance. The goal, to bring people together to create more trans-friendly barbershops and hair salons.
I was surprised the first time that I heard, somebody say like, oh, I have a hard time finding a barber, or I've had bad experiences with barbers, whether it's from the barber, whether it's from, like clients like staring at them.
Hairdressers can register their shops through the Strands for Trans website, which then serves as a platform to find LGBT-friendly locations.
Everyone gets treated the same. I don't judge people or anything.
Honestly, when you sit down in my chair, I just want to do your hair. So if you don't want to tell me anything else and you're just like, I want my hair to look like this, that's what we're going to do.
Catherine Rickard said it was a no-brainer to register her shop, and she hopes it helps Waco become a more accepting community.
Strands for Trans is cool, and the fact that I can't put LGBT friendly on my Google page, I almost feel like I shouldn't have to do that. Like, just worrying about being comfortable going in somewhere, that's not something people should have to worry about.
The 2 said they hope to see more people follow their lead and register in the area.
You can find the Strands for Trans registration link on our website and on the 25 News app.
Several states, including Texas, have filed bills setting limitations on the LGBTQ+ community. Half of those bills target transgender people. They include Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which limits discussions on LGBTQ+ issues in classrooms for students 3rd grade and under. Then there's our state's transgender sports bill, which requires kids to play according to their biological sex and not their gender identity. There's also Governor Greg Abbott's directive, which classifies gender-affirming care for kids as child abuse. Supporters say these measures are meant to protect children from making life-altering decisions.
Important to note that these hormones, puberty blockers, and even the procedures themselves are permanent procedures and medications that can have life-altering effects for that child's life. To make these decisions before the child even has full cognitive ability, before that child even knows what they fully want, is very dangerous.
But critics against these bills say statistics show that LGBTQ plus kids are at a higher risk of suicide.
We know from so many studies, from so much information about the risk that like trans kids are under when it comes to bullying, when it comes to suicidality.
According to a survey done by the Trevor Project, about 45% of LGBTQ plus youth considered suicide. 14% have attempted suicide within the past year. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual people are twice as likely to experience a mental health condition. And for transgender people, that number is even higher.
Still ahead, a group of Aggies living their truth, how they're staying strong even though A&M is no longer funding their event.
Plus, freedom from fear, how a Bryan gay bar is providing a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community. Draggyland in College Station has become one of the most beloved yet controversial events Texas A&M has held on its campus since it began in 2020. But the LGBTQ plus community says it didn't feel welcomed until this year.
KRHD News reporter Brittany DeFran explains how some people feel about taking one step forward and 5 steps back.
Drag was once a small community in College Station.
Most people didn't even know that drag existed out here. I didn't know.
Until the LGBTQ plus community began stepping in their truth and Draggyland was born.
Having stuff like Draggyland is a step in the right direction, whether or not people agree with it.
An event that was once held here at the MSC building was stripped of its funding and moved here at the Rudder Theater, where student orgs came together to support the LGBTQ plus community, ensuring the show must go on.
When you originally heard that news, how did that make you feel?
I was disappointed, but I wasn't really super surprised. Then whenever I saw how many people were so adamant about bringing it back, it really made me feel super hopeful for the community.
Casey Mackey, also known as Jessie B. Darling, won the title of Queen of Draggyland in 2022. Mackey says the LGBTQ plus community is no stranger to controversy, and in 2020 the event also received backlash they were able to overcome.
It was cool to see people come together then, and it's cool to see people come together now in a much bigger way, because this time we didn't have the backing of the funding of the school.
All those playing a small role to bring Draggyland to life say the message they relayed meant so much more.
I'm very happy that I got to participate in something that I know is going to go down in history. It's only the 3rd year that they've done it, but this year really meant a lot more than just can we put this on? It was, can we put this on and succeed and kind of prove people wrong? We proved to them that all we wanted was just a space, and we created one.
And the impact it's made has also changed the lives of participants like Jessie B. Darling.
If you're a girl, if you're a guy, anything in between, you can do drag.
To be a part of that legacy, it's really rewarding. So I'm very thankful that I got to be a student at the time that all of this was happening.
Now organizers of the event look forward to hosting another Draggyland come this December, one that'll be sure to sell out time and time again.
A North Texas Republican lawmaker vowing to introduce a bill to ban children from going to drag shows. The move comes after a family-friendly drag brunch at a Dallas bar.
Representation matters, and being able to see queer people having fun together, being respected, being open about who they are and not fearful about who they are really just gives kids and even adults who are struggling with their identity hope.
Oftentimes, LGBTQ plus friendly bars and clubs serve as a center of culture and community for many cities and towns. But the smaller the community, the harder it can be to find these type of spots.
However, in historic downtown Bryan, one spot that's been around for nearly 20 years is a safe place no matter who you are or what you identify as.
I have a lot more confidence because I do have spaces like Halo. This is me, I'm a gay female. I feel like I have an army behind me.
Mallory Gerard is a Dallas native.
I was used to a big city with a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures.
She moved to Bryant to be closer to her wife.
I was scared to be in public with her. I was scared to hold her hand just because I didn't want people to think, oh, they're together and think negatively about us.
She remembers a town with limited options for those who identify as LGBTQ+.
It's a community that they're unfamiliar with, so they're afraid.
But it's spaces that when the sun goes down and the lights come on, that make her and others feel at home.
Having areas in such a conservative town that want people to accept and bring more kinds of people in of different like sexualities and gender, I think it's very forward.
That's Vitamin D. She was born 6 years ago.
The movement of drag is as an art form to spread love, positivity, comedy, humor, sex.
The Queen performs across the state, but makes it a point to come to Halo to inspire those who may not realize other people like them exist.
It just makes me feel so good inside that I'm like, this is exactly why I'm doing this.
Because in many communities, nightlife for LGBTQ young adults is rare, especially in the smaller towns.
Regardless of my sexual orientation, I can contribute to this community in multiple ways. So it's really been great to just see the growth in the community as a whole.
Gerard says the Brazos Valley is consistently making strides to become a more inclusive place with more and more resources becoming available. She says she's proud to live in a community that realizes how important it is to accept LGBTQ+ people.
Organizations like the Brazos Valley Pride Center are on a mission to provide education and emotional support for the community. Katrina Stewart has been through her own journey with sexual orientation and gender identity, and now she's creating a space for young people to turn to for support as they navigate the difficulties of what that journey will entail.
I would like us to be a community. I'd like us to be able to sit down with people who don't know what LGBT is and not approach it with so much fear. Have just an honest conversation and people be themselves.
As Stewart looks ahead, she's hoping the Pride Center will continue to build relationships through volunteer work in the community. On the federal level, she hopes to see the LGBTQ+ community get more representation and new laws to protect against discrimination in the workplace.
Love is love.
And for two soldiers on Fort Hood, it makes the great place even greater. Their story just ahead. Everyone has their own timeline when it comes to coming out, but for those who've taken the oath to serve their country at one point, they were forced to hide who they are, fearing they could be discharged from the military.
Arlia McNeil caught up with one couple at Fort Hood who shares their personal experiences as a gay couple in the Army.
Patriotism and pride
I get excited about putting the uniform on every day.
Are the foundation of our military.
I'm very proud to be following in my father's footsteps.
I tell them like being in the military is, to me it's the best job ever.
But pride in oneself wasn't always celebrated. Don't ask, don't tell. It was a policy that prohibited lesbian and gay soldiers from disclosing their sexuality.
There were days that either I would lock myself in the room, I would cry, and I didn't know that at the time that was also causing my depression to kick in even more.
Chief Warrant Officer 2 Zachary Woodall Cowens swore to protect this country, no matter how much of himself he had to hide.
Being called every name in the book, and people thinking it was a joke to say, oh, that's just so gay, but not knowing that was actually very offensive to me.
After years in the dark, Cowens found his light in Captain Richard Hennebrey.
He understood what I was going through with my depression and suicidal thoughts as well, and he said that he got me.
With Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the rear view, in 2019, Hennebrey and Cowens tied the knot after years of dating with support and love from their families.
And I don't throw it in their face, but if If they ask how my spouse is doing, I always make a point to say, "Miss, my husband's doing great. Thank you for asking."
The couple are now stationed at the Great Place.
It's so normal. I have leaders coming up to me all the time and soldiers asking me how my family is doing, to include my amazing husband.
Both in leadership roles, living their truth.
The days that I thought I wasn't going to wake up, the days I didn't want to do anything, seeing how the Army has changed and how they have evolved and started accepting it more has made me realize, yes, instead of laying down and rolling over and dying, I decided to stand up and stay strong and keep fighting.
As they navigate through life like any other married couple.
Do y'all have any fights?
Yes. Yes, we fight all the time. At home, like, rank doesn't matter, so I can't win.
They hope to lead and inspire other soldiers.
That one question that you ask that soldier that is struggling is the one question that can get them to open up and tell you everything that you want to know.
Remember that you're not alone out there. You have people like us that you can come to and talk to anytime.
To wear their uniform with pride.
The road to marriage equality has been a long one. The fight to legalize same-sex marriage started in the 1990s.
In 1996, the Defense of Marriage Act was signed into law, making it legal for states to deny marriage equality. In 2003, the Supreme Court struck down sodomy laws.
10 years later, the Defense of Marriage Act was ruled unconstitutional. And just 2 years after that, in 2015, same-sex marriage became legal at the federal level. We want to thank you for joining us in celebrating our pride, to acknowledge and celebrate our differences and recognize those who are fighting for a better tomorrow for everyone.
To learn more about these stories you've seen here tonight, as well as the resources available in your community, be sure to visit our website, KXXV.com, and click the Celebrating Our Pride tab. Thank you, and have a good night.